Namaskar, Acharya ji. Everything is dead and everything are basically molecules that are just in a default arrangement. So, can we say that Prakriti has induced us into a falseness that there are these biological senses and these compulsions that we have of our emotions. So, does observing these emotions and observing these compulsions and avoiding them, does that is that a first way to move towards being truly alive?
Yes, observe them, but without blaming Prakriti or anybody. Nobody has brought you to this condition. You wanted to exist, therefore you gave yourself a condition. Anything that exists in some condition, right? Huh? So you want to exist, so sometimes you give yourself a good condition, sometimes a bad condition. Just observe.
Yes, is that the entire purpose of life, is to just observe and then not be like just swayed away by it?
The ego does not need an entire purpose of life. It's so much in pain and so full of immediate distress that it's enough for it to pay attention to its immediate surroundings. And the most immediate to the ego is itself. So words like ultimate mean nothing to the ego. The ego is like a patient on ventilator. If you talk about life after 10 years to somebody who is on ventilator, assuming that he is able to talk, it's quite meaningless. That fellow is looking forward to the next 1 hour. Will I see the next day? Will I survive the next hour? That's the ego. So much in distress that even the next 1 hour is difficult to predict or see through or navigate.
It's fascinating how all this relates to evolutionary biology, like so much of it.
You cannot appreciate Sankhya Yoga if you do not appreciate evolution. Entire Sankhya Yoga is evolutionary. But unfortunately, so much of religion has been about creation, not evolution. Religion says man came through a process of creation. And who was the creator? Some god. Now the fact is, in Sankhya Yoga, there is really no place for any god. You call it one of the Astik Darshans. But in reality, in the Darshan itself, there is no god. There is no god in Sankhya. And there can be no god in Sankhya because Sankhya is continuously about evolution. If things are evolving, how can there be a creator? If one thing evolves into another thing, show me where is the creator then? When you say creation, you mean there is somebody who just made this thing into what it is. But the fact is that the thing did not become what it is in one go, in one stroke. It has continuously been evolving. So that's the great contribution of Sankhya Yoga. And that's also what Yoga borrows from Sankhya. That's also what Vedanta owes to Sankhya. That's also what Buddhism owes to Sankhya. The thing that entire existence is a flow. Everything is a process. Everything is ever changing. That's Sankhya. And the very common tripartite division of Prakriti into Sat, Raj and Tam. Today we take that as commonplace, but all that comes from Sankhya. So yes, that's the reason why I continuously say evolutionary biology is so important. When I say evolutionary biology is important, actually what I'm saying is Sankhya Yoga is important. But if I just say Sankhya Yoga, this generation might not appreciate that. So I say evolutionary biology.
धन्यवाद आचार्य जी.
So my question revolves around the statement that you said that we all actually don't exist, and even our consciousness is also false. And if I look at Arjun at that moment, then even Arjun is being driven by his bodily tendencies only. So even he is dead, right? So to whom Shri Krishna is teaching at that moment. So what is still alive inside Arjun at that moment, even after being dead inside out?
The dead man walking is the dead man suffering. He needs to be cremated. That's what the instruction is all about. You are already dead. Why do you continue to walk and suffer? Let's put you to rest. Let's cremate you. That's the Bhagavad Gita. The ego is the dead man walking. Dead, still suffering. Rather suffering exactly because it is dead. So that's a delicate thing to appreciate. You are not, yet you insist that you must be. You forcefully insist that you must be, and in that you create yourself. But your creation is needless, therefore you suffer. It's like a car already packed, full of 5 passengers. And those 5 are sufficient. They can deliver the goods. There is a nice network, a perfect equilibrium that those 5 passengers or 5 elements very ably serve. Then a 6th one tries to barge in. He says, I must fit in, I must fit in. I'm needed. Now this 6th one is outside Prakriti. But he forcefully enters the car. What does he do? He creates suffering. He is not needed, he is coming in and he creates suffering. Everything is proceeding very nicely. And then something happens. An unwanted intrusion. That's what the ego is about. A needless thing, and therefore a thing that causes suffering, obviously only to itself. We said today that it's a belief. And I'm fond of often saying the ego is the most fundamental superstition. So it's a thing of the mind. You remember the Abrahamic story about the origin of everything? So there is God and there is Adam. And to give Adam some company, there is Eve. And that's Prakriti. Adam, Eve, and the great garden. Appreciate the symbolism. There is Adam, there is Eve, and there is a great garden, and they are just roaming about happily. And God has instructed them, there is that particular tree, and there is that apple. Do not take that apple. And that's the apple of knowledge. And then this mischievous snake comes and says, there's a special apple that God is probably reserving for himself and you must have. So it was needless. Needless knowledge is ego. And it results in suffering. That which you need not know, but in a spell of mischief, you start knowing. That's ego. What is that needless knowledge? Belief. Useless knowledge. Needless knowledge. Just superstition. Something that you should have never believed in. But now you have taken it in. Now you have taken it in and it cannot be just ejected out. So God says, now that the two of you have done this, all right, go to earth and breed kids, and the entire humanity will proceed from there. And these two were really in a state of bliss. Sahajata. Sahajata. Egoless sahajata. These two were in an egoless sahajata. It is said that the moment they ate the apple, they became conscious of the I, which is called self-consciousness. Conscious of the I, self-conscious. So what did they do? They covered their genitals. They became ashamed. Conscious of the I. Because the I sprung up. There was no I. That false belief gave them the I. So they became self-conscious. So they covered their body parts. They covered their body parts. And then God banished them from the garden of bliss. He said, you go now. You go out. You have defiled your own Prakritic purity. You have violated my instruction. There was no need. You go. So, needless. Everything is all right. Everything is already all right. And the ego comes and says, no, something extra is needed. The ego is the fifth person in the car. Somebody extra who is not needed at all. The ego is a kind of overpopulation. Tonight itself I have we can publish a mini book of the number of definitions we have accorded the ego. Yes.
So, sir, what we call as consciousness is also a part of my ego itself?
What you call as consciousness is just material reactivity. When you say you are conscious of something, you are just reacting to that thing. It's like we said, iron being conscious of the magnet. Just as iron experiences the magnet, similarly we experience the world in very, very predictable and pattern-based ways. There is no real wisdom or realization in that. And the test of that is, iron cannot not react to the magnet. Iron cannot not react to the magnet. And that's what is called compulsive reactiveness. Man cannot not react to the abuses. Woman cannot not react to the man. That's a compulsive magnet and iron relationship. There is no real life in that. Spirituality is about bringing life by putting the dead to death.
Okay, thank you.